Hello, hello, everyone. It is Kenyon here. Basketball Rewind. It is not Kobe Buffkin Day, and Kobe Buffkin is no longer in trade talks at all. So Pascal Siakam is here. Also, on today, we just finished a preseason game last night, the first one, and so this is going to kind of prime where our thoughts are. The other thing is that we had to kind of do a bit of cleanup work because when we did our Eastern Conference stuff, we did it before the Dame trade came down. Now, in terms of our projections, I don't think it changes our projections too much, but it's still you want to add it into the analysis. So today's episode is going to be talking about those two topics primarily. I think we're going to start off by talking about the Dame trade and what went down for each team. I think we can also talk about the Drew Holiday trade as well, mainly focusing on the Eastern Conference side of things. And then from there, we're also going to talk about, preseason. So without a further ado, let's talk about the Dame trade right now. So first thoughts were the way that day went down. What were your initial thoughts?
Okay, coach.
You want me to go? Okay.
You go first. You go
Well,
first.
well, for 2 or 3 days leading up to that day, we were told by Mark Spears that the Raptors were the number one front runners to get Dame. And we heard the rumors. Dame really didn't want to come here. It's fine. In the end, it is what it is. And I guess last minute Milwaukee get in there and said, no, we want Dame. Giannis has been, I give Giannis credit, but I give the front office credit. Um, they have a superstar and they listen to him. He's been wanting to be at a championship contending level for his prime, and they continue to do that for him. So, you know, getting Dame and Giannis, in theory, this should be the best 1-2 combination in the league. The things that Dame does well, Giannis doesn't do so well. The things that Giannis does well, Dame doesn't do so well. So it's like they could be the perfect complementary skill set together as a duo. Look, I see, should say, before the trade, I had Milwaukee top three anyway, probably top two with them in Boston. Nothing really has changed there. The only thing that maybe has changed a bit is I have Milwaukee first place in the East now. I could see them winning 60 plus games if everybody's healthy, that is, because Milwaukee did lose a little bit of depth in this trade. They lost Drew Holiday, they lost Grayson Allen, they lost some shooting and some guard depth. They also lost some defense as well, especially from Drew Holiday. But I think there's still enough there with Giannis, with Brook Lopez. Brook Lopez was in the running, I think, for Defensive Player of the Year. Giannis has won it already. If Middleton is healthy, he'll give them 18 to 20 a game, I think. So I think Milwaukee has really solidified a spot in the Eastern Conference Finals. And more than likely, if I had was a betting man right now, both teams healthy, because I don't like Boston's bench right now. I think it's worrisome for them. I would have Milwaukee in the finals, either against Denver or one of the Lakers or Golden State.
Um, I look at it this way. Like, I mean, Giannis pushed as what player his stature should do. I think he saw the writing on the wall with his team, like everyone else saw the writing on the wall with his team. And I like the move from Milwaukee's standpoint as how, I guess, in looking at it from a perspective of this team in this market, pretty much they took the deal right up under Masai's nose. Like, and be honest with you, the way I look at it, I don't even know they did that. It wasn't that hard to do. If what is true, what is being put out there in this case, what our quote best offer was, the deal of the century. Um, like, if you're to have a deal and Gary Trent Jr. is the principal in that deal, and you're looking to get Damian Lillard, like you're not for real. You're not for real. Honestly, you're just wasting people's time. And that's what this franchise does. They waste people's time. So at this point here, good for Milwaukee from a prognostication standpoint. I think I had them around 54, maybe wins, I think, around that range at the high end. I'll bump it up to the high 50s. I don't think anyone's still winning 60 games in this conference. I think to the points that Coach mentioned with their depth, they're still. Last time I checked, they're still old, and Dylan Lillard ain't gonna make them any younger. So it's still pretty. And he's no defensive wonder. So I still put them. I give them up, somewhere like 55 to 58 games, just depending on the injury bug and stuff like that. So yeah, I think they should be the number one seed going to the playoffs this year. But does that make them unequivocated favorite? No, I don't think so. I think they're a slight favorite. If they in Boston were before pre-trade, they were like neck and neck. I think they now nosed ahead of Boston, but I don't think they're like some prohibitive favorite to win the whole thing. This is not the Heatles we're looking at here. This is my this is not Miami the glory days. This is like, okay, they're a very good team. They still have a lot of flaws. They still lack a lot of athleticism, and they're still pretty old when it's all said and done. And now they're a little more shallow on the bench with a new head coach, and that's also a factor to consider as well too. Sometimes those new head coaches go very well. Sometimes they don't go so well.
Yeah, so the new head coach thing is something that, again, I think a lot of people have forgotten in this general conversation about that specific team. I'll also add, if I'm not mistaken, they picked up Cameron Payne as a backup. So, they did add a few small pieces, to kind of round things out. But right now, I think, again, I think all three of us, actually, I should say, had Milwaukee as the number one seed, and had Milwaukee more than likely winning above 55 games. I think most of us said they could easily get into 58 games territory. 60 games is possible, but it's going to be a little bit tougher because if some of the other teams are, I'm not saying a whole bunch of teams are coming up, but even in their own conference, you're not or I should say division, you're not expecting Indiana to be at the same level that they were last year. In fact, they should be taking a step forward. So, yeah, I think 58 games. Again, it hasn't really changed much in terms of our overall projections. I think that it allows them to kind of cruise a little bit more from an offensive standpoint throughout the regular season. I do want to see that Milwaukee, Dame Giannis pick and roll. What will be interesting is to best utilize that, are you using Dame as the ball handler or Giannis as the ball handler? There are advantages to both. Giannis obviously has the downhill gravity that he can, and if there's any, him going downhill, there's really nothing that can stop it. At the same time, having him getting it off the catch with Dame as the ball handler, that could be very interesting. With the flip side would be if you give the ball to Giannis and almost do I guess a 5-1 style pick and roll, things get a little bit more interesting because obviously you have to guard Dame. Dame is, in my opinion, not the same level of a screener as Giannis, but it is interesting. And yes, Giannis has grown his playmaking, but are you making him play make a little bit too much? Just some questions out there. But I agree. I don't think it's like people are writing it off like it's done. And again, this team is much. Both teams are better. We'll get to the Boston piece in a second. But are they transcendent? I don't think that they are transcendent, but they are better. And right now, it looks like a two team race. Um, in terms of really quickly, in terms of the Raptors side of things, it was interesting because there was a tweet out as if the trade had gone down, and then all of a sudden, nope, trade didn't go down. So I agree. If you're going to be serious, I'm going to take a line from Bill Simmons. So shout out to him, of course, but and Ryan Russillo. But yeah, it's like at this point, OG Anunoby must be a Hall of Fame player because the people that we haven't traded him for, you're talking about Dame. You're talking about, potentially, I almost said Mitchell Robinson, but Donovan Mitchell, as well as Kevin Durant, potentially. These are all players that are really good players. And so, yeah, that's it. Any final thoughts before we go to the Boston side of things?
I would just you mentioned the pick and roll scenarios. I would think, like, we'll see what Adrian Griffin thinks of, but I would think you'll prefer to have it as a 1-5, I guess, pick and roll if you're looking at it from that perspective. Because I think if you want to save Giannis from a career standpoint, you don't want him to keep going downhill, barreling the folks left and right there. Because, like, listen, he's not looking like Superman these days either. Last couple of years, he's had 5 days here, 10 days here.
Just
You
had
know,
cleanup surgery within the offseason as well.
he can't continue to be playing like that. And if you could have a guy could set him up for just literally for the dives and he do what he does, that would save a lot on his wear and tear instead of him just revving up the engines from the 3-point line and just barreling into three guys and bouncing off of them. For baskets, I think that might be just, and I'm not saying you just kind of get rid of that style of play for him, but just cut the percentage down. In this case, we have Lillard in this case, and we could just set him up so much easier on rolls. So we'll see. I think it's going to be very interesting to watch, see how it all plays out.
Yeah. Coach, do you have any final thoughts on that?
No, I thought you guys summed that up quite well. And this whole, I think, Jan, you had mentioned it, and Kenyon, you did as well, but this whole OG thing. Like, if they were legitimately serious, they would have to include OG in this deal. And this just gets back to the conversations we've already had about overvaluing your players. I think OG does have quite a bit of value around the league, but this is Dame Lillard we're talking about here. We're not talking about, a couple of first round picks that might be lottery protected. This is a top 75 player
who just had
ever
his
to
best
play.
offensive year and one of the best offensive seasons in NBA history. But,
Exactly.
just saying.
But, yeah.
Moving to a game, okay.
I would have loved to see my favorite player play in Toronto. I was getting ready to go buy a jersey if he came here. But
number 0, agent 0, and not agent 0, number 0 jersey.
I'll quickly say, and actually this is interesting because I will be talking to Louis Zatzman, who did a piece on Dame later. So that'll be an interesting conversation to kind of, pick his brain about that. But I know a lot of people brought up the age and stuff like that, but this is like the one guy where it's like, first of all, age doesn't really, we tried to iron it out in a conversation here, but I don't think that age is a really truly understood in today's NBA. People still seem to, I heard a conversation with someone saying that, like, well, this year Tatum's going to surpass, Giannis because Giannis is going to be on the downslope of his career this year and Tatum's still on the upswing. And it's like, it doesn't work like that. It doesn't, growth is not linear. And also, like, maintaining that growth and stuff like that, it doesn't just all of a sudden you reach an age and it just like goes downhill, right? There's a lot of things that go to it. And even within the time period that you are growing, you can have growing pains. But before I derail that, the conversation to go into that kind of thing. I feel like the last thing on that topic is this. Beyond, you said it correctly. I like the way that you characterize it, but it's like this is the type of trade that you make on 2K or on Spaces, right? With trade override definitely on, right? Where it's like I'm giving you junk, and let's make the money work, and then give me Dame, right? And the key factor, the key player in this was the Suns. And I think I don't think that the Suns would have said no to OG over Grayson Allen and others. Personally, I'm a fan of Grayson Allen. I'm not comparing him to OG at all. So people, fans, please roll back the tape and play that over again, because that's not what I'm saying. However, I am saying that, like, comparatively speaking, they were able to build a better bench than what we were offering. And so, again, the Suns were the linchpin in that deal. All right, on to Boston. Boston made some changes, as we know, as a fallout of this deal as well. Earlier in the offseason, Marcus Smart was traded. They brought in Kristaps Porzingis. Now, my problem with Boston has always, with this iteration before they got Drew Holiday, was always with the big men depth. And that remains so as well today, because they had to trade Robert Williams. Now, Robert Williams, as good as he is, has injury problems, but they didn't exactly get someone to replace him from, a positional standpoint. So I'm very curious to see how Kristaps Porzingis holds up, as well as Al Horford, now that they don't have another big down low that it can help them, who's really good. to kind of play defense and kind of absorb those the NBA schedule. Um, Obviously, they got Drew Holiday. So before I give my thoughts on that, I'm going to just hear from everyone else, and just in general what you think of them, where you think that they'll be. I'll say my predictions of where they'll be at the end. But spoiler alert, people, I think we already kind of did say that they're, these are the top two teams in the East.
Yeah, Brogdon went out in that deal too, right?
He did. Yep.
So like their bench is going to be really interesting because like they've lost a lot of depth. Grant Williams went to Dallas, Brogdon out, Time Lord out. Essentially, I guess the reason why as we're doing this, I guess the reason why Peyton Pritchard got bagged in this case the last 24 hours explains that. But if you're riding on Peyton Pritchard in this case here to give you a lot of minutes, I don't know, man. I would feel a little concerned if I was a Boston fan. That's what you're looking at in this case here with that type of extension. I'm like overall, I do like their first 7 or so. That's gonna be like they're gonna be strong in that sense. But I think unlike before where they could probably go 8, 9 deep, I think it gets a little dicier for them now than it did beforehand. Drew Holiday definitely is like literally from a standpoint of if you're having to replace Marcus Smart essentially, like that's essentially what you want. He's like literally as good a defender. Maybe make some arguments some ways better in some ways. But definitely where you would have Smart in this case here, he's more of a consistent offensive player, which a lot of times the Smart issue is that. A guy knowing how to kind of, make decisions late in games and figure out what to do in this case here late in games. To be fair to Smart, I thought he got better at that because I think a lot of times Boston fans like to throw everything on the Smart, because he does make an odd boneheaded play. Say, oh, see, look there. It's like, no, there's a lot of other stuff going on here.
I was actually going to say one thing that surprised me of the fallout of this is to learn that like Marcus Smart was actually better at handling the ball and making plays than Drew Holiday, surprisingly. So that's going to be interesting. Sorry to interrupt you.
No. I think people tend to, because, since there seems to be on Bill Simmons' day, right? There's another thing he says in this case that I kind of agree with him a lot about is like some players have this issue where like their 10% is so bad that people just can't get over that 10%.
Yep.
And you use it in the sense of Westbrook, right? And Smart's a lot like that too, where he'll make the boneheaded play at some point, and sometimes in a key high leverage moment. But a lot of times he does a lot of great stuff. You can make an argument in this case. Smart was their best player. He and Jalen Brown in the finals.
He had moments. So people don't freak out. He's not saying that he's their best player, but it's just like he rose to the challenge.
If folks at home are not intelligent enough to figure that out, Kenyon, I'm sorry for them. But you're what I'm saying. The press is nothing about that. Okay, that's up to them.
You're not wrong. I've been told that I shouldn't. People aren't along for.
If they want to take that, then they, as I said before, I don't know what they're watching. They might need a Rosetta Stone or something like that to translate what's going on here. But what I'm saying is that he's the most consistent. He's more consistent than people give him credit for. Yeah. Drew Holiday's going to be fantastic for them. I have no problems with that. But I think, from a leadership standpoint, I still question that because now you're putting into the two J's. And they haven't proven to me in this case here that they can handle that thing, handle it in high leverage moments. And they still have some really bad habits that they can't get over at the moment that we'll see if this year is it. But based on the video watching that Jalen Brown dribble, that was not really in that clip.
That was
warm and fuzzy inside if I was a Celtics fan.
Yeah.
And then Jason Tatum's shot selection is still an issue. Because if he's going to be out here bombing threes like he's Steph Curry, I saw him in a video clip still out there practicing pull-up threes instead of him getting the basket, in this case, at 6'10", and just shooting over dudes. Like, that's what's going to help you get the promised land. Like, that shot he's trying out there, that's a regular season shot. Fine. But in the playoffs, literally, boom, 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 3 steps, pull up. And you can do your poor man's KD impression. And no one's blocking that. Now, I understand why these guys like to make life hard for themselves so much, man. I don't get it, but from a Boston perspective, to your point, yeah, they'll be right behind Milwaukee. Might give them an extra game with Drew Holiday now because I think they are a bit better in this case with the firepower. So that's it.
Yeah, before Coach goes, I'll just say really quickly, a really interesting thing is that like everyone's complaining about how maybe statistics has ruined sports in terms of the Blue Jays. And, you bring up the Jays, I'll say, but especially Tatum. The interesting thing is, like, again, like this goes back to what I'm saying, where people are like, well, I want Siakam and Barnes, I want Siakam to shoot about 7 threes a game, and I want Barnes to shoot like 5 threes a game, nothing less. And it's like, first of all, that's not necessarily optimizing them, but also just from the standpoint that, like, again, the mid range at the end of the day, because if you're only doing threes and layups, like Jason Tatum's exact shot chart will dictate, at some point, the defense, what is the point of attack defense, right? It's to stop rim penetration. So that's that's there. Your 3-pointers are, in general, you're gonna have moments where you're gonna live and die by them, right? Sorry, Curly. I know your podcast name, but you just like how you live by the three, you can die by the three as well. And that happens. We've seen that time and time again. Houston Rockets come to mind. So at some point, it's like in a playoff situation, especially, you're going to have to get into moments where what's the best shot for you is actually going to be the mid range. And actually, Darko, I really liked his post game press conference because he talked about that. He said not all mid-range shots are bad shots, right? And a lot of people seem to have like mid-range is bad, blam. And it's like, no, maybe if you're like literally like DeMar DeRozan back in the day where you're like your toes on the line each time, right? And you're like, okay, fine, take take the little teensy step back. But but in general, there's nothing wrong with the mid-range, and you do need a mid-range threat. Sorry, coach.
No, and as a coach, nothing drove me crazier more when a guy would have his foot on the line, 3-point line, than it's a two. I just found that very undisciplined. You can't step back 2 inches or 3 inches, and should be the same concept. But anyway, I digress. So I think Boston will be right there with Milwaukee, assuming Milwaukee is healthy. Assuming both teams are healthy, I do give Milwaukee the edge. In terms of guard depth, I give Boston the nod. You've got Holiday, you've got Brown, you got Derek White. They just re-signed Peyton Pritchard. It's a pretty good 4 guard depth rotation that Boston can throw out there. Milwaukee, yeah, they might be the best player out of all of them. Then after that, man, it gets you're looking down at the bench a bit more. You get Malik Beasley, who's a good pickup for them, and then it's questionable, but we'll see. I think their perimeter defense will be very good. Their interior defense with Porzingis and Horford should be good, but we just don't know about their reliability. I mean, Porzingis, he's beyond from being a Mavericks fan. Porzingis is always hurt 20 to 25 games a year, if not more. Horford is, I think he's 37, 38 years old right now. And then you got Luke Cornett, who was in the G League 2 years ago. So they're very thin up front, even though they're really tall. There's not much depth there from the big standpoint. And then Milwaukee, that is their strong. Sorry?
Literally and figuratively.
Yes. And in Milwaukee, that's their strong set. It's their bigs. It's Giannis. It's Lopez. It's Portis. So they kind of are contrasting differences that way between the guards and the bigs. But Kenyon, you said a good point of how Boston plays. It's a lot of threes. It's a lot of layups. And they never really got better in that category. They got Porzingis. Well, it's a lot of threes and that's some dunks. Drew Holiday, he's pretty good. He's not Dame, but he's pretty good. Like their guard defense or perimeter defense will be better. That is for sure. But I just don't know. I just worry about their depth overall because they gave up a lot with giving up Time Lord and Brogdon in that deal, and some from other previous deals as well. Like Brad Stevens, I give him credit. At least he'll go for it. We might disagree on how he goes for it, but at least he's trying. That's for sure. And same with Milwaukee's GM as well, prioritizing their best player. So, and I watched the game yesterday with Philly and Boston. The paint was wide open. Kelly Oubre was getting to the rim, and he's not exactly Kawhi Leonard attacking the rim right now. So kind of I would be concerned about Boston's interior defense a bit moving forward. Even though they have some big guys, that doesn't necessarily mean they're Brook Lopez and Giannis in there.
Well, I didn't want to pull at that point you mentioned because you mentioned my experience with the KP experience. And just for folks, my dad's a Knicks fan, so I've seen it a lot of different ways over the years. I don't understand. When did I miss when Porzingis became a rim protector? I must admit, when did that happen?
He was a lot better last year in terms of protecting the rim, so I will give him credit with that. I wouldn't necessarily call him a rim protector, but he did a lot better at like in terms of his defense last year on the Wizards. Mind you, it was the Wizards.
It was the
Um,
Wizards at the
yeah,
point.
so I will full disclosure so that people know. I've heard some wacky stuff out here. Like someone was just like, we should trade Siakam for Porzingis because he'd be a good fit here. And I'm like, what are we doing?
Williams, the KP, like there's levels to this, as the kids say. Robert Williams, the KP, like I like. I said before, it's nasty to see, but when Coach said so, I saw just the highlights. But like, yeah, no kidding. There's like a freeway down,
Yep.
down Fleet Street, down the Fleet Center, because like there's no one to stop you. No one's in fear of like old man Horford and Porzingis. Like, come on now, and Luke Cornett, come on.
This is going to be something to watch for. Is their interior defense when the front line defense or first line of defense kind of fails and people get through that point of attack, then what happens? So that'll be interesting, coach.
Just think of all of Milwaukee's stretch bigs, not so much Giannis, Brook Lopez, and Portis. So you're going to be able to pull their big guys away from the basket or get them in mismatches. And now those guys who can stretch the D can really shoot the three. So that's why I kind of got to give Milwaukee the edge in that category. Because it's like Dion kind of pointed out as well. As much as that paint was open, now just pull Horford away from the basket or pull Porzingis away from the basket. Imagine then what it's going to be like. So we'll see moving forward. But that's why I give Milwaukee the slight nod in the end.
Like, see it now. Al Horford playing Giannis in this case here, and Lillard is going right by him, and then the rotations are going all over the place, and he's just picking out guys. Porter's for three, boom, out. This guy, coming in for three, bam, out open. Just because the rotations, we have to be so quick for Boston to catch up to it. Yeah.
Yeah, and by doing that, it also puts a lot more pressure on the Jays. On top of that, I think again, they're not really running currently with a traditional point guard right now. So, we'll see how that happens. Again, I mentioned the points about Drew Holiday. Really good player. I really like him actually as a player. But at the same time, he's not really a point guard right now. But he is serviceable. So it'll be interesting to see, but I think that's your 1 and 2. You definitely expect above 50 wins for both. I give the edge to, and probably pushing on 55 wins. As I said before, actually, when the Porzingis thing actually initially happened, I said I think that Boston will be a better regular season team and not as good on in terms of their postseason. That remains to be seen, but we are about to find out because we are in the middle of preseason and the games are starting to come. And in fact, in 2 hours from when we're filming, exactly on the nose, they are about to play the Knicks in a preseason game, so that will be fun as well. So, with that being said, got to talk about the key player that was left out in the cold for the trade that happened, and that would be the Toronto Raptors. So I would say that we did want to talk about the fallout of that, but within that, I think it's a good time to also mention not only the Raptors but how they did it in the preseason within that. Thus far, it's only been one game, and kind of basically talk about I don't want to reminisce on and what shoulda, coulda, woulda, as my mom would say. If wishes were horses, beggars would ride. But what I will say is this: the Raptors did not get Dame, and they also did not get Drew. And before we do a kind of a little mini recap of what happened, I will say that they still could use, if they're going to be putting Dennis Schroeder in the starting lineup, or whatever, and Gary is going to be on the bench, then you would ideally want someone who could offer a little bit more from an offensive initiation standpoint on that bench. Thoughts on us not getting Lillard besides the fact that we already kind of admitted that it would have been nice?
Yeah, Yeah. Well, I'll put my number out here. I know we did kind of like an if or, when it comes out, but I mean, I'll just say I still have them winning about between 45 and 48 games on the high end,
Okay.
even without Lillard, of course. If it was with Lillard, obviously we're now north of 50. But 45 to 48 games, and I think watching the first preseason game, I think it's funny, it's amazing how one game could change everybody's mind and opinions. Now, if I've been saying this for a while,
True.
you and I have been saying, Coach been saying it, and you had a lot of doubting Thomas is out here. He was like, oh my gosh, I don't know what you guys thinking. I was like, and now all of a sudden we are now now the road is paved in gold to the championship. All of a sudden now. After one game, it's like really, but all of a sudden now guys are talking about guys like McDaniels that we've been kind of talking about is like always minding them is like, oh, that guy doesn't even get playing time on the thing. Now all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, this dude, man, he's amazing, blah blah, this and that. So I will say this much about I'll say this much.
I remember talking about him being like an upgrade, and people were like, who is he saving? Who is he saving? And I'm like, bro, I didn't say he's saving the team. I said that he could play.
He's speaking some alien language. Like, what is it he's saying? Like, let's try to decipher what this means. Like, no, like, dude.
Yeah, I think you're right. Sometimes we may need a Rosetta Stone, but that's a whole other thing.
Seriously. But as far as the game goes and what we've seen so far,
yeah.
I mean, the Schroeder thing, I mean, I do wonder a little bit, and we'll never know, but how much was this kind of internal pressure after the FIBA experience? Like, let's put it this way. If FIBA did not exist and we just play a regular summer, in this case, as usual for the NBA, would he have started off as being the starting best point?
You mean like, would they have eased him into that?
Yeah, eased him into that. Would they be a little more open to the GTJ being the starter at the beginning and then working Schroeder into it? Or in this case, was the pressure from him being MVP of the FIBA gold medal winning Germany, it made it a lot easier for them to just kind of rip the Band-Aid off one time and say, hey, guys, this is what we're going to do anyhow.
Would the Western Conference Finals have had any, in your mind, any effect on that as well?
Not as, maybe a little bit. I think more to do just the fact that it's Darko's relationship with him, that I think he eventually would have been the starter. I just think it's one of those things where it's just like politics in this case here, right? GTJ is still like the guy who started the team. Fred's gone now. GTJ is going to think, hey, I'm now back to being a starter. So especially a guy that's a free agent. Now, I'm not sure where their stance is with a free agent, depending on what week it is and how the wind blows in Raptor land. One week, it sounds like they want to keep him as like a long life Raptor. The next thing you know, they want him out of town. The first thing smoking. I don't know what it is, but I know this much. It didn't hurt Schroeder's cause in this case his performance this summer. And I do wonder if it made it easier than where they were going to go. And also too, let's face it, he's a security blanket for Barnes when it's all said and done. And I don't know, even at the beginning of that game, as much as, look, folks, slow it down, man. Okay, Scottie had a nice game. We'll get to him in a second. But when it's all said and done, Schroeder still started the game technically playing the, quote, point guard position as the first few possessions happened. Now as time went on, Barnes got more acclimated and got more into it, but there's even some interesting things as well as Barnes played at times. There's still some interesting things that people should keep watching moving forward. But overall, the ball movement was good. I think I saw a stat where they had like 30 assists, which is like the first time they had in like who knows how long.
Yes.
And I think that's one of those things where there's another thing which I wonder a little bit how much this has to do with Darko's system, or quite honestly, just the fact that Fred's not here. Now, I'm trying to pick on Fred, but like I'm just saying it. Like, I'm just saying, like, would
no,
this
you're not wrong. It's
like, would this just happen? Like, this thing, like Darko now is unveiled this great offensive movement. I'm just wondering, like, if Fred was just moved out of the position and say it was just the same old.
Recency bias is a very interesting thing.
Right, because I watched this team play without Fred before. I've seen ball move without Fred before. It ain't like this is something new. They had some of their biggest totals when Fred was hurt. I think the Spurs game and the Hawks game, where they rolled it like 140 or something like that. And they're like, just like, they look like 8 guys in the court against 5. Like, I seen the ball moving. It can happen. Yep. So this idea that is like all Darko, it's great, wizardry or something like that. It's like, no, I think some of this is just natural things that, oh yeah, one guy's not running around playing 1-5 pick and rolls from 35 feet out like every other play. That might help. That might help.
I mean, we're still playing the possession game. I mean, you look at the game just so that people know. Rebounding, we out rebounded them 48-34. Now, I can't remember if Sacramento's like a stalwart defense or rebounding team. I can't really remember. I know that Sabonis himself is usually a pretty good rebounder, but yeah, and keep in mind, people, it is preseason. Sorry.
Well, that's the thing, right? Yeah, it's preseason. Like folks thinking it's De'Aaron Fox go 0 for 5. That's gonna be a normal situation. Like guys, like let's pull the brakes back a little bit. Just pump the brakes just a little bit. But overall, it's good to see the guys back out. And I mean, I'm not sure if you want to break it down by players in this case to get more into it.
We can in a bit. Coach, your thoughts?
Shots off.
Yeah, I mean, similar to what Beyond said in the beginning, I think I've consistently said I see this team winning anywhere between 43 wins and 48 wins. 48 wins is a high end. That's assuming we have no major injuries. That is also assuming Otto Porter can play 45, 50 plus games, just load manage him, stuff like that. I just found it funny how they're trying to ramp him up to get ready to play. That's literally what preseason is to ramp guys up to get them ready to play. That's why you play them 10, 15 minutes. That is called ramping up. So I'm just curious. I'm like, okay, maybe
right, how brittle is the situation, right? Like,
yeah.
And you're already kind of like, ooh.
You see him like coming down the stairs.
Yeah. When I hear that stuff, it's a little concerning. But anyway, hopefully we do see him play because he offers so much. Offensively, 40% from three. Defensively, we know he can play probably defend 4 positions because he did that with Golden State on their way to the championship. In that game, too, like I had tweeted out kind of coaches' keys to the game, just kind of in laughing manner, but I actually was serious. I want to see a lot more ball movement, and I don't care who wins. In these games, I don't care who wins. And I literally got that in the first probably 5 or 6 minutes. I saw a lot of this half-court offense. I've never seen the ball in Poeltl's hands so much in a half-court offense. Schroeder had the ball in his hands a lot too, and kind of like what Beyond just said. You know, I've been kind of wanting to see point Scottie and stuff like that, but they must not feel that he's quite ready for that, and that's fine if they want to put Schroeder. I mean, Schroeder's coming off the greatest tournament probably that he's played in his professional career in the FIBA tournament, where he was named the MVP, and kudos to him. And you know, I can see Darko wanting to start him as that's probably his guy. It's kind of like Nick Nurse playing Patrick McCaw for so many games straight, coming in off the bench, and I'd be like, "Why is he playing this guy so much? He must be an amazing practice player. I don't get it."
Man,
Everybody nice
coach, man. The Patrick McCaw experience. Oh my gosh, I haven't heard that in a while.
Do you guys remember that? How many games
I do.
in a
Trust
row?
me.
Nurse was playing him like crazy. I'm like,
I mean, man. He had like pictures on Nurse because we couldn't understand why. Remember that one that he played in Boston? We're like, why is McCaw getting like 30 minutes out here? Are you kidding me?
oh man, I was like, he must be amazing practice player. That's all I can think of right now. But yeah, Jalen McDaniels, I was impressed. You know, I was really excited about the free agent signing. You know, I know we all were in a sense because and as Kenyon said, he's a functional player coming in off the bench. Beyond you said, I think you said back at the trade deadline or maybe early in the season last year, you said there are many guys on this bench that probably won't be in the league in 2 to 3 years from now. And I think you were right about that.
One of those guys is on his team right now, so you can't speak too soon. Mr. Joe Weezy.
Yeah, and there's a couple of guys literally on some teams that were with us last year who were on partial guarantee. So they may not be in the league in 2 weeks. Yeah. So we'll see about that moving forward. But
it will be in Europe in 3 weeks' time.
In terms of Scottie, look, I was impressed with his aggressiveness and consistency in that game. But moving forward, it's going to be about, at the very least, the aggressiveness and that consistency. The skill work needs to be continued to work on. I think they need to put him in positions to get mismatches still. You know, he's put on some muscle, as they said. He's working on his conditioning, which I hope is a must for every NBA player in the league. And it was a good game in terms, I think, of building his confidence, like 15 points, 7 rebounds, 4 assists. plus 20. That was the highest on the team. So he was making an impact both ends of the floor in that regard. So we just hope for more of that consistency. And I know we've kind of said this at nauseum as well, but it's going to take 25 to 30 games to know, not just with Scottie, with this team in general, with Pascal. I know a lot of people were speaking about Pascal in this game not having as many touches. One thing I did notice I was really impressed with, and we saw this a lot when he was younger, was his defense. He was really locked in on defense, I found, in the Sacramento game. And I think sometimes we forget just how good of a defensive player he can be. But it's hard to play elite defense when you're playing 37 minutes a night and being the number one option on your team. So I'm guessing Darko wants to, again, it probably not have the ball in his hands as much this year, but also not to wear him down by the end of the season, because we could see it. We saw it by the end of the season. He was worn down. And when you play that many minutes, it's going to happen.
Yeah, so I'll first start off by defending my man, Otto, and I'll say this: it's okay. You know, his orthotics have arrived, and the compression shorts will be worn, and he'll be fine, right? So we'll get we'll get there. We'll find a way, but we will get there. But in terms of the game itself, yeah, I mean, we will take credit for the Jalen thing because I think a lot of people were doubting us all about Jalen. Not we're not taking names, right? I'm just saying a lot of people were doubtful about Jalen, and I will say this: he showed me enough. I know it's just one preseason game, but he showed me enough that I remain confident on some of the things that I said in terms of minutes battles and stuff like that. Because again, the way that he was moving on defense, the way that he rotated, he made 3 different rotations in one play that was just like and got to every single one with authority. On offense, he's able to, there were times where the play would be broken. He got this one nice floater in the mid range. He just plays with a level of poise that again you need of a functional NBA player. Like, it sounds simple, but it's like you need functional. Boston loves Peyton Pritchard for a reason, right? Like, it's you need those type of players on your team if you're going to eventually make a step up towards competing or contending, because when that time comes you're going to need the depth, especially in today's NBA. And so Jalen, I think, helps with that. The fact that he could get to the line a couple times, the fact that he was, very active on both ends of the ball, you really like to see that. He has the length, he has the size, he can play multiple, positions. Obviously, you don't want him to play the 4 too much because, he's a little skinny, but I think he can do that in a pinch. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I'm going to look right now, but I think he hit a corner 3. He did hit a 3. I don't know if it was a corner 3 or not, but yes.
It was an elbow.
It was an elbow.
Elbow 3, yeah.
So as long as he's making his threes, that's another thing that I'm really happy about. I'm gonna jump a bit ahead in our scheduled programming to talk about the man who the crowd was chanting for, and Mr. Gradey Dick, of course. And so again, the crowd got what they wanted, and I'll leave that statement at that. But what I will say is he showed again a really high degree of processing on the court. This goes back to why I like, I said my opinions on the minutes battles is, when someone understands the floor, and Jalen also understood the floor on both ends. But Gradey, as long as you're having him play within a team concept on defense, on offense, I don't worry about him. And even on defense, he has solid hands. But on offense, he had a couple passes. One was to Gary, and other things. He moves the ball, and then he moves off the ball and out of space to create space for others. And you'll see the defenses adjust. He clearly is confident. He probably should have had one more shot if he didn't have a double dribble, because he was a little bit excited with that one, and that one got swished as well. The kid can hoop. I'm gonna just leave it at that. And he will get minutes. You can see it. Hopefully the minutes aren't going to be with the dudes that he had out there all the time last night, because that I would like to see him play with real high quality starter level players at times. It would be very interesting to see that. But There was one where I can't remember who he passed to. It might have been Javon Liberty Freeman, but he passed the ball and then he just made a cut, towards the baseline and then down towards the basket. It was so fast, and that whoever had the ball didn't even see him fast enough to make the read and make the pass, and it was a missed opportunity. It probably won't be in this, but at some point I will do some film study on him, because I think he makes a big difference when he's on the floor. The one thing I will say is he was grabbing his shorts a little bit much. Again, strength and conditioning. It's going to be a big factor for him this season. I guess if we go down the line really quickly, Schroeder, I'm happy, with what he provided. I think we need to talk about the lineups that we don't want to see, but before we do that, I'll just make a quick note on Barnes. Like I said, people couldn't call me a hater or whatever. Again, I implore you to listen better. What I will say is this: Barnes, if I didn't make it clear before, I'll make it clear now. Barnes needs to be aggressive like he was last night, consistently. He himself, his words, not mine, said that there were times last year that I did not give the effort for a full whole game. He needs to do that. That is a bare minimum thing, especially for a number 4 pick. This is what I expect of him, right? So I am glad that he is playing up to expectations. And I'm also think that he will be a much better player when he plays up to expectations and when he gives a full whole game worth of effort. When he does that, he's a much better player just by that. In terms of skill-wise, I will still say he needs to work on the handle. He needs to work on the shot. Those are things that he needs to work on. There's other things that he needs to work on too, but the handle, the shot, and the footwork are so, for him to be a solid and good player, he needs to give the effort. For him to get to a great status, not just from one game, that's where the skill work will come in. I would like to see him become a good player right now. And I think that he can, and I think that he will have improvements. I have never said that I know some people, remember Mouth was like, well, what happens if he regresses? And he's not going to regress, right? It's just going to be the level of improvement this year. And I think that the level of improvement will just come right now with the effort. Yeah.
I just wanted to kind of just jump off what both of you guys said here, because I really haven't discussed Scottie yet, but let me start with him and then work backwards. Mm-hmm. Scottie in this case here, like, there's an old phrase that doesn't get bandied about much more in basketball vocabulary anymore. We used to refer to, in this case, a professional scorer. Okay. And what we are trying, at least what I'm trying to say is, I would like to start working towards him becoming a professional scorer. So what we saw yesterday is what I was literally coming on RLTV or any other space you had, or even on this podcast, talking about the effort, because the effort alone should get him 15 points a night. On that alone. So you get fouled on some offensive rebounds. You may get put back here. You hit a couple jump shots here or there, or hook shots that he has, a turnaround jump shot. That alone should get him 15 points. But my point is to what Kenyon just said. If you're the 4th pick overall, we shouldn't be asking about your effort in this case of the 4th pick overall. In theory, you're like the youngest guy in the court for your team every night. So why are you the one here you're trying to get effort from in this case at this point? So in my mind, he's like almost a year behind of where he should be. Like last year, what we saw just now, yesterday, should have been efforts we should have seen last year during the season. That's so to me, he's almost like a year behind his development of what he should be. Now, the professional part I mentioned before is when it starts getting tougher and the games start getting tighter in the regular season, and of course, if you're fortunate enough to get in the playoffs, the effort stuff can only go so far. You're going to have to be able to knock down your shots and manufacture some offense on your own. And this is where the next stage of his development needs to go, and in a hurry, if the Raptors want to get to where they want to get to. Going backwards, Gradey. Let me tell you something, man. I didn't watch all the game, but I watched the summary of it. And I watched some of his highlights. Let me tell you something. Man, that dude popped like no one's business when I watched that. I was like, holy cow, he hit some shot. I don't remember the last time I see a Raptor hit a shot like that. He had one coming around the curl. He was on the weak side. Came around and hit a shot at the elbow, fading away. I was like, what? I don't remember last time I see a Raptor be able to pull off a shot like that. In this case here, when you're talking about, quote, movement shooting, that just jumped off the screen. And my goodness, I don't know, like from a talk about skill set standpoint, you gotta find a way to get that guy 20 minutes a night because that type of shot making does not exist on his team. I don't remember the last time I could think of a franchise from a franchise standpoint. Like, I mean, I'm not saying he's this. I'm just talking about the type of players usually that make shots like that. There are guys that have names like Vince, guys that name like Kawhi, like guys that hit shots like that. And I'm not saying he's that. I'm just saying his shot making for type of shots like that is like that's something we don't see with a lot of players from this franchise. Like, you're not getting it from Mo Peterson, for example. That's not what you're seeing in this case here. No disrespect to OG, that's not a shot he can hit. For him to hit a shot like that and a couple other ones, I was like, oh wow, you gotta get
that was in his face too.
Yeah, that shot was tough. He's fading away. I was like, Mike, all net. Because some guys when they hit the shot, it's pure. Like, some guys are wrapping around the rim and stuff like that. It goes in, it goes down. Most time when he hits it, man, it's like water, man. It's just coming down. It's just raining. That's all you hear. I rarely see a Gradey Dick shot go in where it just does. It's not like rattling around, bouncing around or stuff like that. Like how a lot of Raptor shots are, and then pops up and then eventually goes down. No, man, that's all you hear. And you gotta get on the floor with better players, man. I'm sorry, man. That type of shot making, you gotta get on the floor. So going back one more step, Mr. McDaniels. I said something to you, I might say it on a space. And I said at the time, just thinking out loud, my own Ed Sheeran here. I was thinking out loud for a second. I said to myself, hey, you know what? I said, he might actually have made the best offensive package outside Pascal and maybe Schroeder on this team at the time. And not one game goes by already. We got a man knocking down three, throwing up a floater, hitting a mid-range shot or something like that. I would like you to please tell me the other Raptor on this team that could pull off all three of those shots. Please step forward if you are that Raptor. I would love to know. And I think you will see more of that. And this idea that he's a guy just a throwaway, folks, you all missing the deal here. If Darko's got any common sense, this dude also needs to play about 15, 20 minutes a night at least. And I don't know, like to me, this is what I kept saying last season. And thank you, coach, for bringing this to our attention. This is what a functional NBA bench looks like, folks. We're talking folks like Gradey Dick and McDaniels. This is what professionals look like. Not the nonsense we had there. And that's the one thing I'll never take for Nick Nurse last year. So on that front, I couldn't knock him. Because I looked down the bench, I'm looking around and saying, I'm just looking back the other way. There's nothing back there to look back at.
I mean, he said it sometimes in his own book.
Yeah, he just looked at
He was talking about Norman Powell, and he's like, well, the sad thing is there's no one else, down the bench to play but you. Right. And I'm like, wow, like you said that to a player. This is in your own book. I wouldn't say that to a player, but okay.
Right, but Powell, even at that stage, Powell was better than anything we had on the bench last year.
Powell, a lot of people miss Powell off the bench.
Yeah, right, that's my point. I'm not talking about Powell that we know of today. I'm talking about Powell that Nick Nurse was quoting. I would take that Powell over anything we had on the bench last year. That's my point. So now when you see actual professional players, what it looks like, it's like, oh, now have to we worry about, oh, geez, how much bench we can give Flynn? How much we can give Precious? No, I don't need that. Now, I'm sure they're going to shoehorn Precious in there somehow, and we'll be back to where we were before. Him taking ridiculous shots as usual, but we'll wait and see for that moment to come when he gets healthy. But yeah, it was fun to see that part of it. So on to the next phase.
Yeah, I mean, just since we're going down the line, and again with Barnes, I will say, another thing. The thing that I really liked about him being aggressive was the rebounding. I think he did a really good job of that, and I think that does deserve a big amount of highlighting. Again, people not being in super negative. I think the idea is that like when he's aggressive, he gets to the line. I keep talking about the importance of getting to the line. I don't think it's something that people fully understand that concept, but it's like the best scorers in the league, right? You say you want him to be a professional scorer. The best scorers in the league, part of their game management is getting to the line.
One thing to make sure, with point guard Scottie, I'm not sure you're going to mention it, but just to throw it here, he got pressed at half court yesterday in the first quarter. That was interesting. I
was trying to keep it all positive because, anytime.
I'm just saying, just keep eye on it. We got to get the deal with the bad, man.
But yeah, I saw him get to the line 7 times yesterday, made 5 of 7. I don't think there is more than he might have gotten to the line once last year 7 times, and even that I'd have to double check. Yeah. I know he got to the line at least 6 times once or twice, but in general it was like 3 times. So
Atlanta game was the one.
I'm not expecting him to get up to 7 times a game every single game, but if he can get, he should be above 4 or 5 if he's really going to push for 20 points a game. Um, I'll really quickly mention Jakob and OG, but I guess since you did bring it up, yeah, the handle is exactly what I was talking about with that, where it's like there are going to be times where, again, that's why you have the training wheels out there with Schroeder, because if there are going to be times where he will get pressured. We didn't see it as much, and you won't see it until regular season more, where teams are really, really going at it. Although that was a physical-ish game yesterday. But when teams are going to start pressuring him, you'll see how often. Because if he's going to really struggle bringing it up the ball, just like how Flynn was sometimes struggling bringing up the ball, eventually they're going to go away from it. And that's going to be interesting to see what the counter is and what the Raptors do to put him in a position to succeed. Also, to be honest, because he is not the team. There is no iron team. There is an iron win, though, as Michael Jordan would say. But how do they put him in a position to also make the team successful as well? You were going to say something.
Sacramento did that when Schroeder went to the bench. I remember he got
Yep.
hot potato over the GTJ. So just to keep in mind, like
Yep.
when they start deploying that tactic on him, it might be when Schroeder goes to the bench. And so it's something to keep an eye on.
Yeah. Also, as a side note, before we go to the OG and Jakob, Gary he was really good. This is good Gary. When Gary's good, he's hitting everything. My concern with Gary still remains. I think he gambles a little bit too much on defense. Now we're seeing that it's not just Nick Nurse's system, because there was one play. I don't know if you guys saw it. I want to say it was around the 11-minute mark, but I might be getting it wrong. But or right before the 11-minute mark in I think the second quarter, and he jumped out at a pass, missed it. His guy was wide open, and then that guy ended up fumbling the second pass, and he ended up getting lucky by being able to gamble a second time and get that steal. But if he didn't gamble in the first place, he wouldn't have put himself in a disadvantageous position. And so I would like to see him rein in the gambling a little bit more, especially in a Nick Nurse system. The defense for this team is going to be interesting because, again, we have a type of system. Maybe this is just ironing out bad habits, but I don't think that we have to play a high wire act. And it'll be interesting to see how guys, including OG, who's more used to a frenetic pace, how they respond as well. So I think that's a good segue into talking about OG and Jakob Poeltl. Jakob, as coach said, touched the ball a whole heck more than he might have ever touched the ball in his entire life, and handled the ball. Of course, he did a lot of high post action for San Antonio, but it was interesting. It'll be interesting to see how that works moving forward. I think you need guys to really be tuned into cutting, and I think at some point you're going to have to turn him into a threat, because if I'm glad someone else brought it up on Raptors Republic show. I've been saying it for the longest time. Sabonis can do it, and this goes for Scottie as well. You can't just turn those guys into Sabonis, because we saw what happened in the Golden State series, and eventually that's going to happen. So I would like to see one of those two guys really be able to step it up from at least the long mid range, because that could really make that viable for long periods of time. But I like it, and I think the offense was humming so far. So yeah, and then for OG, it did look like he worked with Steph for a little bit for his handle, so the handle was better. But again, we do this thing every year around preseason, So I'll leave the OG conversations for others, you two, but yeah, thoughts on OG.
Can I comment on the Poeltl thing first?
Yeah, sure.
Because you had mentioned about Poeltl being away from the basket. And the idea with that too is if Poeltl catches it in the high post, anywhere between the foul line and the 3-point line, what is he doing as well when he does that? They give him the ball there. He's bringing the big guy out away from the basket. If the big guys are stupid enough to come out and guard him nose to nose, well, then the paint's going to be open for someone. So that's where you can have Siakam seal, you can have Scottie seal, or even OG seal. And I noticed yesterday too, there was a play. I don't know if Pearl was on the floor or not, but even OG, he kind of did a back seal on a guy, and Scottie threw a lob pass, and it was perfect. It was right to OG, and he laid it in. So with Poeltl being in the high post that way, you're drawing the bigs away from the basket, and that's where you can get some of these seals under the hoop, or you could have guys cutting. Because I think they want to use him in that Marc Gasol role, more or less the way Nurse did.
Well, Coach, could I ask you a question? Is it also part of it? It has its uses on defense too, because he's able to get back on defense faster.
Absolutely. Yep. And if he and you have your big guy back on defense, and one thing Poeltl is good at is he can run for a big guy at his size. He's pretty good at like rolling to the basket, getting up and down the floor. You know, he's not lumbering up and down the floor like we might see, you know, an Embiid or a DeMarcus Cousins or something like that. Just different body types, for more or less. So I think I can kind of see what Darko is trying to do. And, you know, this also gets Poeltl more involved in the offense. I mean, last year, quite frankly, I'll be truthful, he was getting a lot of garbage points. They were off offensive rebounds, putbacks, stuff like that. Maybe he'll get some points in pick and rolls and stuff like that. But this does kind of have him more involved in the offense now. And I remember always Shaq said, you know, I'm not comparing the two, but Shaq always said, keep your big guy involved because if you want them to do dirty work, keep them involved on offense. I don't think Poeltl's get that kind of ego or anything like that, but it is always good for a team to do that for their big guys.
Yeah, good points. I also will say it also gets Barnes and Siakam and at times OJ going downhill, which is kind of how
Yep.
you want them to be going if you're going to have those three on the court. And really, really, like right now, there's a mismatch in one of those three guys' situations comparatively speaking to the rest of the NBA. Beyond, before we go further down the roster to the dregs of the roster, do you have any thought? So, I'm just kidding, people. I'm kidding, people.
I can part the dregs in this case here because we haven't talked about him either. Jeez,
Oh,
man.
right. We haven't talked about Siakam yet. I mean, I thought Siakam was fine.
I want to go back to this Poeltl discussion, actually, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to pour some rain on this, man. I'm sorry. But the third time when they ran it through him, Sacramento was onto that. They just sagged off him, and he was like trapped looking around for someone to pass to, because in this case, his man was playing all the passing lanes, and he threw up a shot, a clunker of a kind of flat-footed runner off the backboard. I said, this is going to be something that's going to be see a lot of this year. So unless he starts, he's practicing that 15-foot jump shot, you better be proficient in that, because that's the only way you're going to get out of this if he can hit that shot. If he can't hit that shot, everyone's going to be sitting back here like this, just waiting for everyone's cutting to the passing lane. So all the nice things that you guys have talked about, they don't mean a thing unless he's a threat to score in some form or fashion. And I don't see it right now. It's game one, but that was like, that had me sitting like, ooh. Like,
this goes back to my original point where it's like, again, you watch that series, the Golden State Sacramento series, really good series, by the way. But at some point, we saw what happened to Sabonis. And I remember people arguing with me throughout the summer, about spacing with Sabonis. And I said, Sabonis can't space right now. And people were like, but that's not his role. And I'm like, but he's holding the ball in a place and they are literally sagging off of him and packing the paint.
And to your point, Kenyon, it happened the next series to Draymond.
Yeah.
Where the Lakers.
Yes, it did actually.
They could play him and Mooney in the court at the same time, and they had to make a choice. Like, well, we can't have two of these dudes that can't shoot out here.
Yes,
we even have both of them out there at some points in this case here, man. They're out there playing all sorts of guys like what's the kid that was that plays well for them that's always in trade rumors. They're playing him out there for a second.
Kuminga?
Not Kuminga, the other one that's always in trade rumors for the Raptors for somebody. What's his name? Yeah. Oh, jeez. I can see his face right now. He's like a kind of tweener, power forward, small forward. You can shoot the three a bit. Oh,
not Moses Moody.
Bingo.
Oh, okay.
Moody, yeah. They had to play him for late stretches because they didn't play the two of them out there. At least they had to put him out there because they had no front court dude that could shoot. So, like, this idea, it's all great. In theory, it works out, but then you still have to remember the defense actually has human beings too, and they can think of some ways to react. It's not like they're playing like chess pieces or some automatons. They'll sit here, you stand here, and you be about a foot away from Poeltl, and then we have all these sweet driving lanes, all these passing lanes. Like, no, it doesn't
Some
work that way.
turn-based basketball where it's like a video
Yeah,
game where it's
exactly.
okay, next move and then
Right,
basic
like chess
pass,
moves, you shift
shoot
through there.
or like
Right.
dribble, right?
Well,
Yeah.
OG, man, OG's not escaping because once again, we find a way to let OG slide out of these things. But, he played well yesterday. He didn't touch the ball much. Remember, Coach making a point about that when we talked offline about this. I don't know. We'll see how long OG's patience lasts of him just being just a guy just shoots threes, and maybe get the odd post up.
Yep.
Like, to me, it looked the same as it always does for OG.
I still get concerned. So yeah, if I'm gonna be positive, I'll also say like I still do get concerned with like his post ups because again, in terms of how quickly he gathers and then goes up, it's still. I know people. This is a hard thing, okay, but seconds matter. Seconds are big. Like it's a lot of time to take a second or two.
Or when OG's posting up, it seems like it's forever. The seconds are going by. It's like, oh my gosh, please, do you see the guy trying?
And it's like
Boucher. I was like, please tell me he sees that.
That's why I keep going with things like the footwork and stuff like that because you have to take seconds and shave that into half, like fractions of a second. That's why I've harped on certain players' jump shots, speed, and stuff like that. OG is not escaped that either, but he has
gathering.
He has the mechanics. Yeah, he likes to gather his shots and then rise up. And the thing is that again, you have to turn those seconds into fractions of a second. And once you do that, you can really capitalize on the advantages. Again, people, what I implore everyone who's watching this or listening, check out Gradey Dick's shot versus the other two people that are the main that we've harped on a lot at times. And just look at the speed of the shot.
Mm-hmm.
And look at the speed of the movements, and how how smooth it looks, and how quick, how fast it looks. Heck, if you have it on a computer, download the video and look at the time it actually literally takes. You can look at that. These are things that you can look at, and this isn't hidden. So, but I don't want to harp too much on OG. But the only thing that I think, and he's never really. This is the one thing that, as you say, he escapes sometimes, would be the rebounding. Right? And again, the way that he gets his points, similar to Barnes, when I mean this, I mean that he typically does not get to the free throw line. And that's one thing that he and Barnes will have to improve on. Barnes did a really good job in this game of getting to the line. I think OG also has to find ways to get to the line. Because you can't get to the line if, again, just like him, if he wants to be paid like a number 2 option, we'll say, then he needs to be able to get to the line more than it says 0 times here. So yeah, he needs to get more than 0.
That 0 times where I was about to go with it, because I think Darko, quite honestly, just sees him as a 3-and-D guy, which that's gonna be interesting to see how this plays out, because that's what 3-and-D profile looks like.
Well, no, you know what? I'll leave it for another day.
No, fair enough. You leave it another day, but I'm gonna say in this case here, man. Like, this is
because Darko has said some things in his conversations where whenever he's asked about OG, he seems to sidestep it. If people listen to the different interviews, in terms of him being like a big role in the offense, he seems to sidestep it or says like these are the things that he needs to work on. It's not like, oh yeah, or I've heard him talk more about Precious being we're gonna play through Precious.
I can't wait for that, man. I got the popcorn out for that, man. I can't wait for that one.
That he has about OG. And listen, I love all the Raptors and all that kind of stuff. I'm a Raptors fan, but at the same time, it is just what I'm noticing is that, like, again, it seems like they're trying to make him into a 3, like they're trying to optimize his role, which I don't disagree with.
Well, I'm not saying he's wrong. I'm just saying
it's not wrong.
What we saw yesterday, that's how Herb Jones' diet looks like. 3-and-D. Yeah. Pretty much. Odd post up, you get the right mismatch quick and shoot about 5 threes a game,
and
or
you
6
execute
threes.
On that, yeah.
And that's it. You don't get the free throw line. That's it. That's what he was. So the question is, that's what I'm about to say. This here is Darko. This is OG. and they're gonna hit. At some point, someone's gonna be sitting there like, "Yo, get me out." Just trying to tell you right now that those two, what is it called? The immovable force. It was it. What do you have?
The movable, impenetrable,
unstoppable force against the immovable object.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we got going on here. It's going to hit at some point. So all I'm trying to tell folks now, if this is how they're looking to deploy OG, this is going to pop off at some point. Just telling you right now, because that's what I saw from what I saw yesterday. A guy is a typical 3D dude. That's it.
And the thing is, too, OG's an 84% free throw shooter. He was last season. But I just looked at his final 4 games of the year from last year. Not once did he get to the foul line. Not once. Yep. So if you're utilizing him if he is attacking the hoop, like, that's the guy you want on the foul line. You want him and Gary Trent. Scottie and Pascal, just to be fair, their free throw percentages are not as high.
It hovers around the 80%, but you're adding 5% to that.
Yeah, they're going to be around 77 at maximum 80%. Ideally, you want every team that I've ever worked with or been around. You want 80%. Doesn't matter if it's high school, college, or I'm sure some professional league. You get 80%. That's a good thing.
I'll make a gentleman's bet that Pascal's free throw percentage will be above 80% this year.
Yeah, above what? Did you say 88?
80%.
Oh, 80. I thought you said 88. I was like, okay, I'm not taking that bet.
I think 5% this year.
Yeah. I think it'll definitely be up because his legs will be with him, and we saw that with
exactly. He's not playing 30-pound guys heavier than them this year. In this case, he might actually have something at the end of the game. In this case, so yeah, I think he's going to be around 83, 84, 82%. All right, so I'm not too concerned with him as a free throw shooter. Now he's actually going to have some rest and he actually can sit down. But this OG thing is something to monitor. On the GTJ part, I never had any issues with him because Darko also seeing him the way, at least how I see him. He's just a finisher. So why try to make him into something he's not? Yo, man, just run him off of curls and hey, do what you do, GTJ. If he's got going that night, fantastic. So I only think he took more than maybe about 3 bounces yesterday. Boom, boom, up in the net. That's it. And he's finishing off the play. Perfect.
Yeah. And in terms of Trent, because this is something that we've discussed and it's come up quite a bit. I hope Darko just keeps his role consistent. Don't be like Nurse and start him, bench, start, bench. Like, that's going to mess with any player's head. If you're going to keep him on the bench, keep him on the bench then. Play him his minutes. Or if you're going to start him, start him. Don't mess around with this too much. We've already seen last year how much, he had to go through a lot last year with Nurse. So I just hope Darko just keep it consistent with him. I'm sure a player wants to know night in and night out what exactly their role is. Because if you play 35 minutes one night and then 12 minutes the next, you're going to run into some problems there.
And I saw yesterday in the stats, and tell me if I'm wrong, but I didn't realize he had still averaged 19 a game last season. Was that right? Because they had that on the Sportsnet coverage. I'm like, I can't remember the caveat to it, but it was like for a starter or whatever. Because I was like, there's no way.
Maybe for a starter overall, he averaged 17.
So even at that point in this case here, this is what we talk about professional scorers, folks, right? We out here trying to manufacture to get like Scottie and to some extent even OG to be a consistent 19 points per game score or 20. And GTJ's come out here, all his bed just rolls out and scores 19, 20 points. And no one's even think about it. And he technically, in this case, once he's started, he's the second leading scorer.
Looks like he's about ready to go back to bed.
Right, exactly. That's what I'm saying. That's what we talk about professional scorers, right?
He doesn't fill up the stat sheet in a lot of other ways, but you're going to get a bucket.
Right. He's a starter. That means that he's more OG, more than Scottie, any of the rest of them. Yeah. That's what we talk about professional scorer. I mean, yeah, I just think that at least in that sense, Darko's refined their roles, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I don't think that matters GTG so much. That's probably why he's happy, because he gets to do what he does best and what he likes to do. Now, on the other side, exactly. The OG side, that can get very interesting.
It is interesting that Darko does seem to be trying to get everyone to their.
So let's get to the biggest.
What they're best at. Yeah.
Mr. Siakam.
I thought you were because we kind of already talked about Siakam a bit, but I thought you wanted to talk about Flynn.
Yeah. Very slippery. All right. Yeah, Pascal. I'll just say this. Like, oh God, I just don't understand this. As much I give praise to Darko in one sense, I just sit here and wonder, like, what are we doing here? And this has nothing to do with an agenda behind it. That I must be seeing something different. Because how is it that this game? Run this through. Take this through for a second. Think of any other team or roster you can think of in the NBA, and say they wanted to move out their star from dominating the ball as much, right? And then all of a sudden, say in this case here, take my beloved Mavericks for a second, and say we said, hey, you know what? We're going to take Maxi Kleber in this case here, and we're going to put him the elbow, and we're going to run offense through Maxi Kleber. You Luka, you just run off of Maxi Kleber in this case here. Does that sound like it makes sense, folks? Just saying. Does it sound like it makes sense? I keep going down and give examples left, right, and center. Like none of these things seem to make sense. What are we going to do here? Indiana, you're going to get Obi Toppin at the elbow here? We're going to run the offense through Obi Toppin? That's what we're doing? All right, keep going down this. So we're going to tell me we're going to put Precious Achiuwa in the, quote, hub of the offense. And we talk about professional scorers, which I will now say unequivocally, Pascal Siakam's a professional scorer at this point in his career. And you're going to tell me that we're going to run offense through him and he's going to set Pascal to score more efficiently. That's what we're trying to say. Now, the first half of the game, he was doing the same thing as what they had last year with Nick Nurse. He's sitting out in the corner shooting threes initially. Not all the time, but that's where they had him positioned when the set started a lot of times for what I saw. Well, I didn't see all the second half, but the parts I saw in the second half with Pascal, finally we got some curl actions. When he scored off a curl coming around, in this case, the free throw line. I love that. So applause that. If that's what we're talking about, I'm down with that, man. Yeah, I'm okay with that. That's cool. But if you're going to have the ball in Poeltl's hands and especially Precious' hands, the trust that they're going to get the ball to Siakam, I'm sorry. That dog ain't hunted in 3 minutes left to go in the game.
Poeltl I trust. It's the Precious part of things that I need to see it because I don't care who sings his praises.
You got amnesia for a second? We were trying to get in the playoffs last year. We couldn't play Poeltl late in the season last year.
Well, that too is like what happens in fourth quarters. Because like it's basically what we're saying is that at some point, unless we really bet on internal growth and internal growth from everyone really was the thing, and the evaluation term comes up and we actually are able to submit the PhD paper and get our degree finally. I can relate to that. But anyways, I think the key thing is that unless all of those things happen at some point, and this is where Darko's mettle as a coach will really be tested, is what are your counters when things go wrong? Because things go wrong. What is the old saying? It's like everyone has a plan until they get punched or something like that. And it's just like, what happens when this team gets punched in the mouth? What is the counter? Yeah. Is he going to be so much like Nurse where he's like, this is the system, you got to stick to the system? Is he going to go with this? Yeah, exactly. And I think that's really the biggest question. I can't answer it because I don't know. We haven't seen that yet. So far, I wish I would have loved to see Koloko out there yesterday. We didn't get a chance to see Koloko out there. So yeah.
The only other player I could see do that is not Poeltl, because like you said, and I think David Thorpe spoke about this, how you're going to play Poeltl down the stretch when he's only shooting 65% from the free throw line. Teams are going to foul him.
Wait, Thorpe said that?
I think Thorpe was kind of worried about playing Poeltl down the stretch of some games moving forward. I'm pretty sure I did hear that.
No, you're right.
You're going to have to put Scottie there. Scottie's going to have to play in that high post and be able to create and play that role, because you probably don't want to take Siakam, OG, Gary. Probably have to play Schroeder at point. If you're playing Scottie there, you probably have to play Schroeder at point. So I can see a lot
Koloko comes back, I guess, because Koloko could be
when he's ready.
Right.
Yeah, when he's ready.
If Koloko ever shoot a 10 or 12-foot jump shot, if he comes out and we see him early in the season, he's knocking down a 10, 12, 15-foot jump shot, all bets are off. Like, as far as I'm concerned, he's playing the fourth quarters if he's able to hit that consistently, because I know he's going to be fine defensively. And now, if he could, they'll keep you honest, because the other part wasn't just the free throw shooting Poeltl last season, and they were sagging off him late in games. is 4-5. That was the other problem. So there was no place for Siakam to operate when he went down there. Everyone's coming out there on post-game shows talking about, oh, you don't be clutch in this case. So where is he finding any opportunity to shoot? He's got to hit 17-foot jump shots with a guy in his face because no one's respecting anybody else in the court.
Spacing the floor with, I believe it was Thad. All respect to Thaddeus Young. I actually liked when we got him, but Thad Young, Malachi Flynn, Boucher, and OG. And so of that, it was OG and the defense was covering that passing lane. So it's like,
right.
Go create something, Houdini.
Right. Find something to do.
Yeah, but if you're looking for a connective big, I think you've spoken about this, Kenyon. If it's not going to be Poeltl down the stretch, it's got to be Scottie then in that role in the fourth. At least Scottie probably will give you 78 to 80% from the free throw line, similar to Siakam. He's certainly mobile enough. We know he's strong enough. Like, we've watched him for 2 years now. I watched him in his rookie season go at Sabonis in the post. And then we've watched him go at Brook Lopez in the fourth quarter, but that's where that comes back to that consistency and being aggressive again. So if it's not going to be Poeltl, I can't think of anybody else. It's going to have to be Scottie. I don't know if I want Precious in that role yet.
It also could work really well with adhering to a quote unquote a 0.5 offense with quick decision making, because if you're kicking it into Scottie and he has to make that secondary pass, again, as a secondary playmaker, he does a pretty good job of finding that, like, pass here, pass there. I think where right now his passing struggles at times is mainly when he has to do it from as an initiator, right?
Yeah.
Because in a sense, as a secondary playmaker, you're allowing others to make those advantages for you, and he's really good at like processing. Okay, there's an advantage here. Hit the guy. Not the best at getting it into their shooting pocket, but that I think comes with time. But not everyone can be as good of a shooter as Braun, where these are the seams that I like it in my hand or whatever, like that sort of thing. I'm not expecting that, but I think that he would be it. And also, to be fair, if he's really gained the weight and stuff like that with Koloko out, it does actually make sense that, sure, you get to try the point guard thing for a second, but okay, at times when you need to give Poeltl a rest, it does actually make sense for him to be there.
Well, I ain't gonna lie, man. I'm trying not to give the nightmare scenario, but I can see it played out this way. I don't know if Koloko's gonna get minutes on this team.
Well, right now, I mean, he's not even healthy. But yeah, I hear what you're saying.
When he's healthy in this case here, because what Darko's telling me is he wants to run offense through his center. In other words, he's saying, quote, my backup center is Precious Achiuwa. And if that is the case, then that means there's no space for Koloko. And I don't know how many times we got to go through this experiment till someone actually get clubbed over the head by a 2x4 and realize Precious Achiuwa can't be playing any center and we be an effective team defensively. It's not working. It's not working. Because he had some moments against Philadelphia and it looked great in a playoff series in a short stint, that doesn't mean in this case that's something that is replicable for 82 games and a whole playoff run. That's not working. That's not our fault in this case. Joel Embiid like to bail out in this case in fourth quarters and shoot 17-footers. Believe me, you're playing Nikola Jokic with Precious, that ain't gonna happen.
Also, size-wise, I think throughout the course of an 82-game season, I don't know if his body's going to hold up by doing that because he's 6'8". He's not. He's 6'8". So having him as a full-time backup center, which is part of the reason why we were so starved and everyone wanted a center, is partially because your backup center was Precious.
Right. The numbers play out. That once we have two centers playing, we are a much better defensive team. There's less of a drop-off. The moment you gotta go playing small ball lines with Precious at 5, it drops the moment it has any sort of length of time with it. In short stints, you get away with it some nights. If OG wants to muscle up against Jokic or Scottie, we might be able to get away with it because it causes havoc. But you can't run that for 82 games, you said before, or even a playoff series, and think you can get away with that. Like, it's not going to happen.
So, yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see what happens. But, again, it's one preseason game, so we will see. And I just want to see people be healthy because I want to see the decisions that are made with everyone healthy. Hopefully, Right now Coloco's out indefinitely, so it will be interesting to see him back. I don't know if that was what prompted the decision, because maybe they kind of knew that he wouldn't be available, and that's what prompted that.
I hope so.
Or otherwise, but we'll see. Again, I still maintain that I would like to see an offensive initiator off the bench. With that being said, I think we've kind of gone through the majority of the roster. I'm not going to touch on. There's Garrett Temple is probably not going to play much. Thad Young is essentially your backup center at times. He's not really expected to play a whole ton, but they do their veteran thing. Chris Boucher, I think he did his role, played it correctly, because I know someone in the comments is going to go up in arms about Chris Boucher. We didn't mention him enough. I think in the Darko system, I actually like the fact that he cut really well. So there you go. Take the cookie there and munch on it. And then, some stickers too. And then the other thing that I will say, we didn't see McCore. The person, okay. I want to mention, before we go to a close, two players, because this was very interesting, because it goes to a point that Beyond's actually mentioned multiple times. And that was, who did they put as the backup point guard and who they didn't put as the backup point guard. Okay. We saw Noel, which is interesting. Like I said before, at this point, we need guys in the G League, and we need to fill up that pipeline. And I like some of the moves that this franchise has made in the offseason with regards to that specifically. He isn't ready for prime time. I'm just going to put that out there. They put Flynn. They didn't put out Doughton. Did you notice that?
Oh yeah. I mean, look. I mean, what's the old '90s movies? With all those kind of the pseudo Brat Pat, the second one there, with Freddie Prinze and all that. One of those movies that there's just not that into you, or whatever the case may be. The Raptors are not that into you. Okay, at this point, I mean, I don't know. We might have to get JD on here to ask about when it comes to compensation in this case here. Do you make more as a G leaguer in this case than say playing out in Europe? I don't know, because
you make more as in Europe.
I would think so.
You can make a couple million. I mean, Pat Bev fed his family before he made it into the NBA.
I think he's really got to
making $2-3 million a year playing in Europe.
Yeah, go make some money out in Europe. I understand no one really wants to make a move like that if you don't have to, but they're not playing him. They're just not. So move on. Go for me. Hopefully you find a spot if you can in the EuroLeague. I'm not saying so seriously. Because I don't know how many more ways from Sunday they can say no, they really want this team to.
They even let someone else get his G League rights.
I'm saying.
If we cut him, you can have him.
They just try to tell you every way, and he's sitting there going
something right there. They're doing the man dirty.
They're knocking on the door, still bringing flowers and all sorts of stuff like that, and got chocolates to the office. No.
And he's the thing is in every even in when other people are getting interviews, he's somehow in the background got to have a thing in every photo, right? He's been present. He was there at the Darko versus presser thing. They talked about him. They talked about Ben, who's no longer here. They talked about.
He said I'm done with this. You ain't gonna get me like this dude. I'm out of here. Smart on Banton and his agent. Yeah, he saw. He's like, I ain't gonna be that dude in about 5 years' time. No, thank you. I'm getting out of here.
Yes. So yeah, I mean, we'll definitely see what happens. But yeah,
out in the Flynn in the point guard situation, or the backup point guard.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm sure the front office knows, with the whole Nurse and Flynn thing. You could just watch in the game, Flynn would come on, guy would be up at the counter or at the sub in. He'd always be looking over shoulder. I actually do think they want to and try to improve his confidence from that standpoint. The only way you could do that is to play him through the mistakes. That's it. Nurse never let them do that. I'm not saying that's so much, what I think they should do. I'm just guessing that's what they're trying to do right now, just to see exactly, what can we get from Malachi Flynn? Is he serviceable? Can we actually get 10 to 15 minutes a game from him in Darko's offense? Darko's offense, in the sense, is very traditional. It's point guard, you take the ball up. Center, we're going to run it through you. And it's also very European like that. How many times in FIBA basketball with the Euro teams did we see them run the offense through the big man? Spain ran it through Willie Hernan Gomez. Serbia ran it through one of their big 7-footers not named Jokic all the time. So he's going to have that kind of traditional, yet somewhat this European modern flavor offense instilled on this team running it through Poeltl. So I didn't make too much of it. I know down the stretch last year, because the bench was so bad, he looked serviceable when Fred wasn't in the game. His defense actually wasn't too bad. So I think this is just trying to figure out, well, what do we have with Malachi Flynn? Can we play him? You know, is Scottie going to play more point guard as well, which is kind of what I was looking for. We'll see how these narratives play out.
Shout out to Malachi Flynn for giving me a conversation.
That's right. Yeah, I
I'll link
guess he
that down
did.
below. So with that being said, any final thoughts on the game? Because we're trying to end it on a good note. So
I'm gonna say something that
I'm half joking, people.
Beyond kind of touched on this with the McDaniels thing. I wondered if Porter or Achua both played, if we would have seen him as much this game. I think that was very big for him moving forward to show what he could do, because he was 4 or 5. He shot 80% from the field. He made 1 3. He was 2 of 2 at the foul line. So he had a pretty good game in 16 minutes and had 11 points. I do wonder if Porter was playing in this game if we had seen him as much. I wonder if Precious was playing in this game if we had seen it as much. Even though they're putting Precious in the backup Poeltl role, but still, I'm guessing that would also affect his minutes of fit. So I think McDaniels really needed this.
My opinion is that McDaniels is carving out a role for himself just by his play, and it will be very clear that he's the one that should be getting minutes. I mean, you even see a lot of reporters and stuff like that commenting on it, and I think that they weren't expecting it. I think that they were expecting Precious because of the flashes that Precious tends to show because of his athleticism, while forgetting some of the fumbles that he has in general because of his current level of basketball acumen. I'm trying to be nice to people.
This will be the first time we'll see with the front office where we find out how much the front office is involved in these decisions.
Bingo.
Because what I saw yesterday was pretty much either from high above or maybe just Darko's own instincts. He decided to give the old guard their opportunity last night.
Exactly.
All the old guard got their opportunity last night. So I would, to coach's point, Precious would have been out there running around the place doing Precious stuff anyhow. So to answer your question, the old guard would be out there. I mean, yes, technically Porter's part of the old guard, but he almost didn't play, so I consider him like new guard. But
yeah, I don't really consider he played an exact 8 games,
4 or 5 games. Yeah,
I don't expect Porter will get minutes, but again, I'm not worried about him taking minutes because you don't want him to play a lot of minutes anyways until the playoffs. By the way, I didn't say my prediction. I know you guys said yours. I see them winning about 45 games. I think on the low end, I could see 43 games. I'm mainly lowering it just a bit. I said before, actually, it was originally 45. I would actually go down to 44 games, and then 43 is the low end. I'm going to stick to those two as the range, mainly because of this. The Raptors are in the same division as Boston, and I do think that as a regular season team, they'll be better. So, from that standpoint, you play your division rivals more often than you play other people. So,
and Philly, too. Let's just remember, even though Philly might be a bit of a Philly, but they might be a bit of a mess.
Did I see Harden yesterday? Harden didn't play yesterday. Last time I checked.
Oh no. But I'm assuming that they somehow put something together with Harden and Embiid. I'd have to put them ahead of the Raptors. Not by much.
So we play Philly early on a couple times, which I like.
Get those wins early. They're going to be important.
You got to get those wins early. I think Philly doesn't scare me because, again, as long as Harden's on that team's going to be a damn mess. The second thing is, what are they going to get for Harden? Because I don't think a lot of people are giving up a lot to get Harden in the first place. And the third thing with Philly which is why they don't scare me, is because Embiid's knees do not mix with a Nick Nurse. The way that Nick Nurse is saying that he wants to use Embiid, if they can get Embiid for above 65 games, it'll be a miracle with him not being on a stretcher.
Nick Alex
So
dropping in the quarters last night. Just curious.
I didn't yeah, I didn't really watch that their game too much, but yeah. So I like that. Those are the things I hear what you're saying, like from talent or like purely on paper, but they don't really scare me because I think that they're just a mess. But I fair points.
Yeah, no, they don't scare me as much as Boston or Milwaukee does. Like I have them in that tier of Cleveland, Knicks. We probably might be that lower tier, like with Brooklyn, Atlanta, maybe not Brooklyn, but Miami, that kind of thing. Maybe I should be higher on Miami, but I can't be. Another season goes by and they just keep getting older and older and older. So,
Hmm.
and
And
plus Embiid, he's just gonna be, he's
and
always a
also you got to
nightmare for
remember
us.
that Philly's in our division, but so is Boston. Boston is in Philly's division, and they got to deal with
Yeah.
Boston more often as well. And
Oh
so,
yeah.
and there might be a little bit of bad blood there from the playoffs, but I remember which team quit. So I'll leave it at that. Any final thoughts? Because I don't think we need to talk about like Javon Liberty Freeman and stuff like that right now,
No,
or Freeman Liberty.
I got nothing, man. I'm looking forward to the next game. I really would like to see. Actually, I really like to see what Precious and Coloc will have to, how they would be used in this
Mm.
offense. I am fascinated, or even defensively. So, I hope they get back soon because I like to see what that looks like.
Yep. I'll say, people, before Coach goes, this is a longer episode, but mainly we were kind of catching up on the standing stuff and kind of redoing stuff. So most of our episodes are not going to be this long. But yeah. Coach.
But I think we had, if I did my math right, I think we had 65 bench points yesterday. Now I get it, the bench played more than the starters and stuff like that. But moving forward, Darko was said, I like playing 10 guys. So if you are committed to playing 10 guys, 11 guys, whatever it is, you're going to have those guys off the bench be more engaged, more motivated, and hopefully you're going to be able to you might not get quite 65 points in the game from the bench, but maybe you're able to get 35 to 40 and stuff like that from the bench, which actually would be pretty good. I think Indiana was top three in bench production last year. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but if I remember correctly, they scored quite a few points. So if Toronto can get, let's just say, in that top 12 in bench points this year, that would be a massive jump from like 28th last year. So I think just utilizing the bench moving forward with Gradey, with Precious, and Gary Trent. Gary Trent will be probably the main scorer off the bench. That's going to be key for this team, I think.
Anyone else? or
No, I'll leave it for another day about the bench. No, I want to see. It's something that I'm just curious about. We'll see right now.
yeah.
Yeah,
All
we'll
right.
see.
Well, with that being said, it's been an episode of Basketball Rewind. This has been, like I said, a little bit of a longer one, but again, we had to cover two things, both the game and the stuff. In general, just so people know, we're usually going to be doing these once a week, more or less. There'll be episodes in between here and there, but in general, once a week, and we're going to be kind of covering the week behind and sometimes looking at the week ahead, but mainly focusing on the week behind, more or less. Not really into predicting a week by week basis because again, sometimes I'm not into that. But in general, we're gonna just be talking about the league at large. I think hopefully we'll see if these guys are interested. But I would be interested in looking league wide at least like maybe once a month or something like that. So yeah. With that being said, Basketball Rewind, stay tuned, like, comment, subscribe. I appreciate all of the growth of the channel. We're almost at 200 subscribers. We're trying to, trudge towards the road to 500, because then, of course, that's where I can, start monetizing the channel and stuff like that. But also just in general, it's a good, the growth continues from there. So all the people that have reached out or recently found out that, yes, the three of us are on this channel. Thank you for all of your views, and yeah, stay tuned. So with that being said, peace.